Hey, it's Josh Hewitt. Welcome back for another Straight to the Bar Gym Chat. This is Gym Chat number 246, and we have a guest back with us again. It's Coach Craig Bongelli, strength coach and strength athlete as well from Kitchener-Waterloo. Welcome back, Craig.
Thanks, Josh. Glad to be back.
Thanks for coming back on the show. We had him on the show before talking about hypertrophy, how to get huge, and today we're going to talk about how to get a huge deadlift, which is good. I was actually chatting briefly with Craig about this because that's been one of my goals on and off over the last few years, and I sort of gave up around the 500s and thought, oh, well, that's all I'll probably get unless I gain a bunch of weight and go on juice or something. But he's like encouraging me that it can be done with the right programming, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So that's going to be awesome. So before we get started, for those who are watching who didn't get a chance to meet you last time, could you just go through a little bit of your background and what you do and how you got there?
Absolutely. I started out competing in the Highland Games locally in Fergus. I got interested in strongman and powerlifting through there. Ended up competing in strongman. Ended up in the top 10 in Ontario currently. Outside of that, professionally, I work as a strength and conditioning coach and work with some very high caliber fitness athletes, track athletes, and fighters.
Awesome. Cool. I encourage people I'm going to put some links down below, so check him out online as well. Check out some of his pics, competing and his clients, and you can only see the massive head here on the video, but he's a big dude, so and pretty strong. And good. Frank, I had to mute. We just joined in with Frank DeMeo, and welcome to the show. Frank's been on before with the Gym Chat. And just give me a thumbs up, Frank, if you can hear me. Frank? Yeah? Okay, cool. Frank, I had to mute your mic, if that's cool, just because I'm getting the feedback still coming of my voice. But as long as you can hear us. You can? Yes? Okay, cool. Craig, before we get into it, let's just define the basics of a deadlift. I mean, most people are watching this are interested in getting a big deadlift. They're going to know what a deadlift is, but there are a few variations. There's sumo, there's hex bar deadlifts, car deadlifts, there's straight bar, conventional. How do you basically define a deadlift, and what different common variations are there that you'd consider with training?
I would say a deadlift itself is very simply picking something up and standing until you're completely locked out vertical. So your legs are straight, your back's straight, every joint in your body's lined up, and you're holding the weight or whatever the handles at about waist height. So with a regular deadlift, you're standing over a barbell, hands are outside your legs, you stand up until the barbell's at about waist height, and you're standing straight up. A sumo deadlift is the exact same, except your hands are inside your legs. A car deadlift is the same thing, except you're holding handles attached to a car. Trap bar deadlift is a barbell where you're standing in the middle, and then you repeat the exact same motion. So the key aspect of a deadlift is something's on the floor, and you stand up.
Good. That's a simple enough explanation. Awesome. Okay, good. So what would be, those are some basic, simple definitions. What would be a good weight? I know this is all relative to someone's training background, but what would be a good deadlift weight for someone to strive for, let's say from average or intermediate lifter towards an advanced lifter, based on either if you're going to name it just a general number for guys to strive for, or based on their body weight? What would be a good strong lift or an elite lift, pound for pound, or just overall poundage?
I'd say a double body weight deadlift is probably a reasonable goal for most people to start with. That's a fairly elite goal, in my opinion. You won't find an average person in a normal commercial gym usually deadlifting double body weight. Okay. But I think that's a fantastic mark for people to shoot for.
All right, awesome. And then what about going for elite lifters? What would they? And I guess it also starts to get the bigger a lifter, like super heavyweights, relative to their body weight, might not be as impressive as. Oh, here we go. We got Nassim on the show. Joining us today. Hey, Nassim.
How's it going?
Good, man. Good. So we're just talking about obviously deadlift. We're getting a little feedback from you as well. Thank you. Okay. Turn the mic down a bit. So yeah. So we're just talking about what sort of weight? What's an acceptable good lift for a deadlift for a guy? I mean,
Kind of depends. For a regular gym goer, I would think double body weight is good. For somebody who wants to get really strong, like I like to try to hit 3 times if I can.
Triple body weight.
I think triple. I think that's when it gets to really strong. When you can do 3 times body weight, that's considered really strong.
But speaking to his point, I don't think a triple body weight deadlift is a reasonable goal, even for elite lifters, depending on the size of the lifter we're talking about.
I agree with that too. It kind of depends how heavy you are.
Yeah, exactly. Because I guess once that's what I was just saying. Is super heavyweight lifters, as far as relative strength, pound for pound, like relative to their body weight, there's a point of diminishing returns. Like you can get guys that are 170 to 220. That can, the bigger they get, the strength is going to go up. You get up of 250 to 350, the strength is not necessarily going to increase relative to their body weight to the same degree, right? So, what are your thoughts on the deadlift variations, Craig? Should people try all different types of variations, or is there a way to cycle through them in a program? Like if you're aiming to get a big conventional or sumo deadlift for a competition, is there still a place for incorporating, partial deadlifts, band-assisted resisted deadlifts, hex bar deadlifts, all of those sort of things?
I would say that.
Hold on a second. Nassim, I'm gonna mute you, buddy.
Okay, mute me.
Good. I don't know what's going on with that today. That usually doesn't happen with, but some mic feedback. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, buddy.
I would say there's definitely a place to add in those variations depending on what the lifter needs. If you're a conventional deadlifter with super, super strong hips, maybe you're not going to see a benefit out of adding a sumo deadlift into your repertoire to train with. Same thing if you're a conventional deadlifter with an amazing lockout, maybe you don't need band-resisted deadlifts to help improve that particular area. So all of those different variations can have a place and will have a place dependent upon the lifter's specific needs.
Okay. What about a hex bar deadlift? Does that have a carryover to straight bar? I've always kind of wondered that because it's a popular lift and I find it pretty fun. What's your opinion on a hex deadlift?
I don't particularly believe it carries over.
Okay.
To a straight bar lift, the thing that makes a hex bar deadlift or a trap bar deadlift so appealing is it's the only deadlift where you can have the weight centered with your mass. It's not ahead of you at all,
yes,
which is
exactly.
what makes it, in my opinion, fairly difficult.
Yeah, that's what makes a conventional deadlift much harder, right?
And a sumo deadlift as well to a certain degree, not to the same degree as a conventional deadlift, dependent on the proportions of the lifter.
Yeah. But I mean, exactly. I mean, I find hex bar deadlifts easier. No?
Absolutely. I'd assume everyone would.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, is there any place to teaching that for people, like just for pulling weight off the floor, just as far as maintaining neutral alignment and those sort of things without having to worry about the forward pull of the bar? Or do you think it's better just to start coaching, if they want to learn a barbell deadlift, start with a barbell deadlift?
It depends where they're planning to take the barbell deadlift. If you're planning to take a barbell deadlift to a powerlifting competition, then I'd suggest you train the sport-specific movement more often than not. If you're just a regular gym goer interested in the benefits of a deadlift, I think a trap bar is a very viable alternative.
Okay, cool. Right on. And how would you, if you're working with a client, we talked about what are some pretty decent or impressive goals as far as what to aim for. How would you help someone set a goal or determine goals as far as their deadlift weights, like when you're working with them? For example, like Scott actually asked, how do you determine the goal weight for a deadlift? Is there a maximum that someone can lift based on limb lengths, age, experience, etc.? Is it possible to just keep going up and up given a certain amount of time and willingness to gain weight?
Well, I'd hypothesize there is a limit.
Yeah.
I do believe a deadlift weight will be finite for a given lifter.
You're a realist. Whoa. Yeah.
However, the goal I would set is what the person wants to lift. If someone comes into the gym and they don't care what they're deadlifting and they're not there for a particular lift, then maybe we're just looking for whatever weight we find gives them the physique benefits they're looking for. But if someone comes in and they're looking to power lift, what lift do they need? What's their state record, provincial record, national record? And I say you aim at that first.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then Nassim just sorry. Yeah, we're joined. All right, Dreaderies. He got all the different code names here. Anyway, he's saying you should train both in case. Oh, he's talking about hex bar deadlifts. Oh, just one suggestion that hex bar deadlifts might be good for leg drive and teaching evolved legs more. So there might be a role for that, but not in place of the straight bar deadlift, just as another lift. I guess that's like assistance lifts.
I'd agree. Hex bar deadlifts are good at teaching leg drive, but I would say they're good at teaching leg drive on a hex bar deadlift. The leg drive and the position you're in to get leg drive on a hex bar deadlift is not the position you're in to get leg drive on a conventional deadlift.
Right.
If you want to practice leg drive on a conventional deadlift, I'd recommend more conventional deadlifts.
Okay, makes sense. Right on. All right, so I had a question for myself, and we're going to get into a little bit more about programming, if that's cool with you.
Absolutely.
One of my big goals is to deadlift 600 pounds. So. And I've been up. The most I've ever deadlifted was 550, but I weighed more than I am now. I was like 225, 230. So I'm around 205, 210. I don't mind gaining a little weight, but I'd like to stay leaner this time through. How realistic is that without gaining a significant amount of body weight to move from where I'm at close to 500 pounds now, adding 100 pounds? And what do you think if you were doing the programming? First of all, what considerations would you have in programming, and what sort of time frame would you be looking at for that?
The time frame, we'd have to see where your deadlift is now and what the weak points are in your deadlift. If technique's a major issue, the timeline can speed right up because technique is the quickest problem to fix. In terms of the question about gaining weight, I think you're actually in a good position there for deadlift because I think deadlift of the 3 power lifts is the least reliant on body weight.
All right, cool.
Skinny guys are very often amazing deadlifters. It's not like a bench press or a squat where there's almost a direct rise in body weight and result.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's something that you'd like to. I mean, ideally, if it's a technical fix, then you'd like to work with a person.
Absolutely. Technical fixes are the best fixes, in my opinion, because that's something you could fix then.
All right. Well, before we go on, then, what do you say we do work something out where? Since this is one of my big goals, I'm going to be posting videos on YouTube, and I'm going to be pushing it on my social media, my quest for the 600-pound deadlift. We could work something out where maybe I come down to your studio, we shoot a video of you coaching me with the deadlift, prove that you can pull 600 yourself first on video, and then we work something out where you sort of we do a little online coaching thing as you take me through on the route to the 600. How's that sound?
Absolutely. We can do that for sure.
All right, cool. All right, so we got that coming up then. Everyone who's watching this can look forward to, I'm going to restart my journey for the 600-pound deadlift. Craig's going to be in on this, and then we'll be setting something up in the next couple months, hopefully whenever at your convenience, and we'll find a time that works where I'll come down and take you guys on a tour of Craig's facility too. Right on. Okay, so I'm pumped for that. So let's first, I want to get another question from Scott here. What are some of, we just mentioned this as far as technique fixes, what are some of the weaknesses and imbalances you commonly see with the deadlift, and how do they sort of manifest themselves during the pull? And I guess secondary to that, what would you do to work on them, like the common ones?
The biggest issue I see with a deadlift is an improper starting position. I believe if people can't lock out a deadlift, and lots of people seem to have trouble locking out their deadlifts, I don't believe there's much strength work to be done fixing that. In my experience, that's almost always a problem with their position coming off the floor. They're putting themselves in a position that's ideal to break the weight off the ground, and as a consequence, they're finding themselves in a poor position to lock it out. A perfect example of this is a round back deadlifter.
Yeah.
A round back deadlifter has a much easier time pulling off the floor. You get to your knees, you got a lot more problems.
Yeah. Okay, so would you just tell them to change their complete way they approach it, like not pull around it, or?
Absolutely. The better position you can have in the bottom, the better the lift's going to be, period. The other problems I see with the deadlift is people not understanding what your upper body should do in a deadlift. The deadlift, in my opinion, is not a pull. It's not a pull movement at all. It's a push movement. Your upper body is braced and holding the bar, and you're pushing into the floor to start breaking it off the ground, and then you finish with your hips. It's much more of a push than it is a pull.
All right, that's an interesting way to look at it. Thanks for the props. You're gonna smoke 600 easy, piece of cake. All right, thanks, man. That's what I need. The mental part of it's got to be big too. I hear a lot of people saying how the deadlift is a very emotional lift when it comes down to it. Once you got the technique fixed, and obviously the training has to be there, but it's a lot more as one that you can grind it if it comes down to it, more than you might be able to with a more technical lift like a squat or a bench. What's your opinion on that?
Absolutely. As someone like yourself who's competed in strongman, you know what a car deadlift feels like.
Yeah.
A car deadlift is one of the most crushing mental lifts, in my opinion, because it takes seemingly forever for that car to break the ground.
Yeah.
A deadlift is much the same, in my opinion, with a regular bar. On a squat, you feel the weight, and then you have to move with it. A bench press, you feel the weight, and then you have to move with it. A deadlift, you don't get that advantage. You have to pull and pull and pull and apply more and more force into that bar.
Yeah.
Until it starts to break. And to a lifter, that can feel like an eternity.
Yeah. That's why it's pretty different training a deadlift as you're supposed to from a dead stop off the floor versus when people stand with it off the rack and then start from the top down, touch and go.
Yep.
You can handle a lot more weight, in my experience, cheating that way. Well, or training it differently that way than you can having a loaded bar, pulling it from the floor. I guess just for that very reason, you don't get to, with a squat, for example, starting from the top down and up, it would be pretty brutal to get under a bar at the bottom on a squat and start from the bottom up. And that's the kind of idea what you're doing on a deadlift, is you're starting from that dead stop position. You don't get to feel the weight until it's completely in your hands and the bar actually starts to move.
Absolutely.
Full load. Cool. So are there any other considerations as far as accessory or assistance exercises that you would recommend incorporating? We talk about whether there's big carryover towards like exercises like hex bar deadlifts and that sort of thing. Are there exercises that you do recommend that are important, supportive or adjunctive exercises for assisting with the deadlift?
I'm a big fan of deadlifts, obviously. Outside of that, I like deficit deadlifts and glute ham raises are two big ones in my opinion. Outside of that, I think people underestimate the importance of their lats in a deadlift. It's one of the most important muscle groups in maintaining the position of both the bar and your upper body in relation to the bar in a deadlift. And I think strong lats are incredibly important.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. I found that interesting too. I mean, strong core, that makes sense, but if you think about where the lats insert and originate on the body, definitely having strong lats. And you know what, actually, I always feel my lats on anytime I do any more than 3 reps on the deadlift, my lats are always killing me the next day if I'm doing it right and I'm concentrating on that, which is pretty interesting. It makes me wonder if it's almost like as much upper body as mid and lower.
It has to be. It has to be. Your upper body has to maintain its position and hold that barbell while your lower body applies force to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Your upper body has to maintain its position, so if your body's, you see my hand?
Yeah.
Let's say your torso starts at this angle, and you start applying pressure into your legs to lift that barbell, and your torso starts bending. Yeah. All of that time and all of that movement is wasted force that isn't being transferred down into the bar through your arms because it's bending your body. Any wasted movement is a waste of force, and that's pounds off your deadlift.
Makes sense. So yeah, technique has to be. So when you're starting someone training deadlifts, I would assume you spend a lot of time reinforcing technique, getting positioning, before you start loading it up too heavy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now we talked about assistance exercises that are other areas of the body, muscles that you'd want to strengthen. What about and I touched on it briefly. What about speed work, band work? Partials. Actually, before we get into that, there's one technique. What do you think of this? Someone was talking about, I think I read it on T Nation, and that's touch and go as far as some of the advice you can get. But one technique they were talking about was starting with a heavy partial, so with like your target weight, but from a very short range of motion, like mid thigh, and then progressively each week working with the same load. increase the range of motion. So lower the bar that you're pulling from on the rack, down, 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 until over a period of several weeks you're pulling that same weight that you were pulling for the partial from the floor. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like partial, increasing range of motion partials each week, trying to maintain the same weight. What's your opinion on that for being able to sort of increase your load? It sounded interesting. I never tried it, but what do you think?
It's an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anyone have success with that particular idea. I think there comes a point in the deadlift where you reach a point where you can't pull as much as you could above that point or below that point. For example, mid-shin on most lifters, they can pull more from above mid-shin, and they can pull more off the floor than they can at mid-shin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've experienced something like that too, yeah.
Most lifters do. That's one of Andy Bolton's big things. He pulls lighter weights than he can pull off the floor from mid-shin all the time to build up the weakest point of his deadlift.
Okay.
So on a movement like that, you'd be working down, and the weight would fall apart. There'd be certain areas, depending on your leverages, you'd need to skip. And it's kind of a neat idea. To be honest, I find that idea a little gimmicky.
Yeah.
Most people get that from Paul Anderson, who used to do something similar with his squatting.
Okay. There is a role for partials, but it would be dependent on where their weaknesses are and working on a partial range of motion to reinforce or to strengthen their weakest point in the range.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Now, what about speed work and band work? And this is a lot of. I mean, you met Louis Simmons himself. You got to train at Westside, which is pretty cool. And I saw on your site you got a shout out. You got actually some props. You got like testimonial from Big Louis himself, giving you the big thumbs up. So that's cool, man. So as far as strength coaching goes, you're one of the definitely go-to guys in the area. So what is your opinion for the average strength athlete with regards to speed work or bands or chains?
Bands and chains are different than speed work. They can be used in conjunction with speed work, but speed work has more to do with speed than what types of resistance are on the bar. I think for a deadlift, speed work can be a great idea in terms of teaching you to accelerate the weight and really pull aggressively. But I think with a deadlift especially, speed work is a fairly advanced technique because it's very easy, in my opinion, to allow your form to be compromised to achieve greater speeds. And you're not punished as much for doing that because the weight's lighter.
Okay. So,
sorry.
So we just got related to that. We just got a Q&A. In my opinion, you should always pull fast and explosively anyway, so there shouldn't necessarily be any need for specific speed work. I guess that's meaning your effort is to pull quickly on the bar, regardless of whether the bar is moving quickly or not. So it doesn't necessarily need to do a lighter weight and pull it quickly. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree to some extent. You should be pulling as aggressively as possible. But part of the idea is to feel the weight moving quickly, to manage to accelerate the weight, which you can't do with a heavy weight that even if you're intending to.
You're talking about if you're doing speed work, that's the intention.
Exactly. So part of the intent is to physically accelerate the weight or to have the effect of accelerating the weight if you've got accommodating resistance on it, which is something you can't do with a heavy weight.
Right, okay.
The intent is the same in both, but you can actualize that speed with speed work, and you can't during a regular deadlift.
Okay, so there may be a role for speed work, but you don't think it's necessarily needed for everybody? Is that kind of what I'm getting? Or?
I don't think everything's needed for everybody, to be honest.
Okay, right, okay. All right, so what about accommodating resistance, or what about the use of bands and chains? Again, something that should be definitely considered, or maybe as an adjunct for specific goals?
I actually like accommodating resistance for a deadlift more than I do for the other two conventional power lifts because it forces you to maintain that upper body position under that grinding tension that gets added onto the bar. One of the most important aspects of a deadlift is, like I said, maintaining that structural integrity in your upper body where you maintain your torso in the same position as you break the ground all the way through. So I like accommodating resistance to force that. I think it can also be great for people with a grip issue, to be honest.
Okay. All right, cool. So what would you suggest for me in particular then? Well, we'll obviously get into the details when we talk about how you'd program for me and when we hit your studio. But anything that you'd suggest for a guy like myself? I train lower body twice a week, upper body twice. So you got a couple workouts where I could do, work towards deadlifts. And I want to add 100 pounds to my lift over the next year. And you seem to think it could be done much quicker than that.
Absolutely.
So, all right, cool. So what would be some of the things I can look forward to there as far as, say, frequency or, how often would we be hitting heavier deadlifts, rep ranges, that sort of stuff?
We probably won't hit a 1 rep max deadlift outside of testing for the first 12 weeks.
Oh, really? Okay.
My initial guess before testing everything through with you is we'll do 8 to 12 weeks of almost a linear periodization build-up to see what we can get out of you with a more beginner style of training before we have to do anything tricky at all, in my opinion.
Okay.
We'll decide, we'll deadlift every week. We'll decide what the weakest aspect of your deadlift is, and we'll put a lift in to train that.
Yep.
Other than that, we're going to train your hamstrings and your lats, and that's it.
All right. Okay, so a lot of it's just based on what comes out of the assessment.
The magic isn't in the movements. The magic is 100% not in the movements, and I can't stress that enough. When people think about Westside Barbell, which is a philosophy I align myself fairly closely with, they believe it's the movements. They believe it's bands, it's chains, it's this cool bar, it's that cool bar, it's whatever, and it's not.
Yeah.
The genius of Westside Barbell is the coaching you receive from a guy like Louie and from the multiple lifters in there with an unbelievable amount of experience who can look at what you're doing and tell you what's weak.
Cool. So and then and whatever that might be, the 1 or 2 areas that need work, then you assign exercises based on that, and you just include that in the program. And aside from that, like you said, there's the common areas that everyone has to work on: glutes and core and lats, and then progressions. And then I guess once you start hitting plateaus, then you start to play around with some different something outside of linear programming.
Depending on what we think the plateau is.
Okay.
Is the plateau that you're deadlifting too often? Is the plateau that you're not deadlifting enough? Is the plateau that you can't maintain your abdominals in the position you need to? Is the problem you can't maintain lat tightness so the bar is drifting away? Who knows? And then we have to approach it based on what we see. But again, like I said, the routine isn't magic. The exercises aren't magic.
Yeah.
It's implementing the right thing for the right person.
Right on. Okay, cool. I look forward to it. That's for damn sure. And for all the people that were encouraging me out there, thank you once again. Look forward to more support, and I'm going to get 600 this year for sure. For those 1 or 2 naysayers, I'll show you. All right, cool, man. I really look forward to that. I want to see if I can get Frank and Nassim on here we can get the mics, just see if they have any questions to add in before we chime out. So get ready for it. I'll take my headset off. Here we go. Frank, actually, Frank, it doesn't look like I can unmute you myself. Can you see if you click on your image, put the mouse over your own face on there, you should see a little arrow button, and you could click on your mic. Can you, there you go. There you go. You got it. You got it. Yep.
Wow, most of my questions have been answered already. I was going to ask a little bit about accessory work, and, he was so thorough between the two of you there that you covered it, man. We just finished up a deadlift session here at the gym. As you called me initially, we were still heading to class, just wrapping up. Things went well. We did have a 195-pound guy pulled 500 tonight, and we're pretty proud of him.
Nice.
Another guy pulled 6, but he's a pretty big guy. And other than that, man, it was great information. I really appreciate it extremely much. Very informative.
Awesome.
Really don't have any further questions. No, that's it.
Awesome. I'm glad you could. I'm just gonna meet you down there. Good. Glad you could join in with us, Frank. And yeah, let's definitely stay in touch. I want to do another gym chat with you coming up soon too. And let's keep in touch after I hook up with Craig and get things going for my own program. It'd be cool to shoot the shit a little too and throw some ideas back and forth with you, Frank. And I'll let you know what ideas I steal from Craig. Nassim, Let me get you on here. I'm going to unmute you if you have anything to add. All right, go ahead.
No, hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to, at least that's something that I found pretty interesting, at least with myself, when I deadlift, I'm actually weaker with my belt than I am without it. And I find, well, my reasoning is I can't, and as what Craig was saying, I can't get into the same position with my belt on because I have the regular powerlifting, the big, thick ones, and just drives right into my torso that I can't get into my proper starting position. That I actually got a lot stronger without my belt than I am with my belt.
What do you think of that, Craig? Like training with or without gear?
If you're gonna compete in a situation where you're allowed to use a belt, I think it'd be foolish not to use that advantage, as long as you can make it work for you. Typically, people find that problem, they're wearing their belt too tight. On a deadlift, you typically want your belt one notch looser than you would wear it on your squatting, to accommodate that compromised position at the bottom.
Okay. Cool. That's an interesting observation, though, Nassim. I haven't. I've tried lifting without a belt if I can help it, but I do find if I throw it on, I can definitely pull a little bit more.
I talked to Mike Tashir about this maybe a year ago, and like I said, he said a lot of lifters that he's worked with experience the same problem, and that they need to loosen their belt.
Okay. Cool. Anything else to add, Nassim?
No, a lot of things I like to touch upon. The fact how Craig said about the lats, that is probably one of the most underdeveloped movement like muscles for deadlifts. I find doing heavy weighted pull-ups has brought my deadlift up higher than most other exercises have.
Absolutely.
Right on. That's good.
That has done wonders. And also I want to just add on, you know, that question where you said pretty much start with the weight really high up and go down. Pretty much increasing the range of motion. Yeah. I've tried that before. It didn't work at all for me.
Okay.
But what my reasoning for as why it didn't work, when my starting position at those higher, at the higher, shorter raw range of motions is different than when I'm at those positions when I'm pulling it off the ground.
Oh yeah, you're right. I guess that's a good point. Technically, it can be a pretty different movement, pulling from the bar at all of those different positions. You're right, as opposed to the groove you'll go in pulling from the floor.
Yeah, like usually when I pull off the floor, I try to get my hips. My hips are usually a lot higher by the time it gets to my knees than it is when I try to pull it if I start it at a rack pull at the knees.
That's a very common problem. The problem you'll see with that, and Josh, if you go through your Facebook and see a lot of strongmen from this province, you'll see a lot of people having a similar issue. Yeah. If you lift on a rack pull as if you're trying to lift the most amount of weight, the rack pull will not serve you. The rack pull has to mimic your deadlift from that height. You can't approach a rack pull like you're trying to hit a max rack pull. You have to approach it like you're trying to lift the same position you'd be in if you were frozen in your deadlift and start it again from there.
Cool. That's a good point.
Biggest reasons I think people fail to add weight when doing rack pulls for their deadlift, because they change the position completely. They do exactly what Nassim said, and they drop their hips to try and squat the weight up more, which you can do on a rack pull. But that doesn't serve you if you're trying to train your deadlift.
Craig, do you find a big difference between rack pulls and block pulls? Just placing the weight on the block versus putting it on the rack?
I don't find a particular difference, to be honest. I don't know if you had blocks, I'd train with blocks because I like the way they feel. I like setting up on blocks. And I like the feel of the weight coming off the plates instead of coming off the pins. But I don't believe it's super important to do either one.
Cool. Awesome. I think we covered a lot of information, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and train with you. It's nice of you to extend that offer, and look forward to getting set up in the program, and I'll definitely attack it with everything I can. I am going to be moving in July, so I'll probably get started on something like linear before that. Well, we'll see when we can meet, but by the end of July, I'll be ready to go full out on it.
Absolutely.
And I'll definitely I'll do you proud. If I can hit that 600, I'll I'll do some sort of crazy celebration on here. I don't know what. I think that'll give us also an opportunity along the way. We'll have a couple of gym chats and touch base on our progress and connect here on social media, post some videos, and we'll get into a little bit more of the details along the way of what we're doing and why. I think people will get a lot of learning out of that too. For as far as covering the basics, we presented a lot in this gym chat. So for whoever's watching and want to pull big weight, this will give you the good foundation to start with, and stay tuned, and we'll definitely build from there. All right, man. Thanks again for joining us, and look forward to jumping in again if we can touch base about setting up time to come and train.
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. Frank, thanks for jumping in. We'll join in again soon. Nassim, thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate the contributions. Yeah, we'll talk again soon, man. And Fidel was jumping in. Fidel just had a comment. He posted, "This guy knows his stuff." Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And look forward to jumping in next week. We'll have another guest on it. Until next time, stay strong.